Caroline Owusu Asamoah. Last week, we looked at a book called Breaking Up with Mary Jane. And today, we're going to look at a very sensitive matter, and it has to do with sexual abuse. Now, my author, my guest for today, resides in the UK, and she has gone through a series of childhood sexual abuse. It hasn't been easy for her. Um, it's done a lot of harm to her, but she's been able to overcome. And I'd like us to welcome, or I'd like us to welcome Miss Juanita Headley. Miss Juanita Headley. You're welcome. Good evening,
Good
Juanita.
evening. Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. Now, Juanita is an attorney, and we're going to find out whether it's because of the experiences that she had that launched her into being an attorney. But before we go into that, Juanita, what have you been up to?
So far, I've been really making the most of working from home, which is amazing. It means I commute from my bedroom to the office next door. I've done a lot of various initiatives. One of them is lockdown lessons, which are weekly Zoom sessions with people from 6 different countries joining me every Thursday afternoon or evening, depending on the time zone, where I discuss the topics of human trafficking and child abuse. I'm also currently working on restroom stickers, and that is an idea I have to have stickers with human trafficking information being placed in restrooms all throughout the United Kingdom, eventually Trinidad and the Philippines. I'm also working on some initiatives with regards to my desire and dream to open a bakery one day, hiring ex-convicts, and so I've sent through some applications for funding. And then in addition to that, I'm working on podcasts on the issues of human trafficking and child abuse, working on my second book, and I'm also working on a number of other initiatives, including some fun things like growing vegetables from the kitchen windowsill. So I'm having an amazing time. I can say that the lockdown has been very difficult for a lot of people, but I'm certainly making the most out of all of the free time that I have. And it has actually been, for myself, the most productive experience of my life. And definitely for 2020, the lockdown has been a very positive experience for me.
That's wonderful to hear. I mean, I thought it was going to mess things up, but it's also favored me. I wouldn't like to talk about that, but maybe another time I will address that. Now, I have read the book, and in your intro, I mean, you spoke about why you needed to write it, but I want you to tell the world before they rush in to get your book, why you decided to come up with this book, because looking at what you've gone through, it's not easy to speak up. And I know while reading, you mentioned that when you went to the church thinking they would help, people were rather stigmatizing, and older men were rather hitting on you. So what inspired you? What pushed you to go ahead and write this book?
I would definitely say the Holy Spirit with a lot of the decisions that I make. It's always the Lord that has directed me, that has made provision, that has inspired the idea. And in fact, the book came out of an experience that I had during one of the panel interviews I did whilst in Trinidad. It was Trinity TV station, a Catholic station. And my co-panelist asked the question, and he said, Juanita, what is it? Is it, can you tell a secret? And I was like, no, it's, can you keep a secret? And from that day forward, every interview I've had, including 5-minute TV or radio interviews, I talk about, can you keep a secret? Now, please understand, it's not to promote the book, it's to promote the question and to get people to change their responses more appropriately, because I am convinced if we can all respond appropriately to that question, can you keep a secret? Then I believe that children who have been abused or are being abused will be more free to disclose that secret because of how you've responded. And I honestly promise you, it really was the Lord. I don't try to over spiritualize because I'm a born again Christian. It's not to sort of sneak in my faith in Jesus, because that's important. But really, in complete transparency, the Lord disturbed my sleep one night. He likes to do that. When I go to bed, he likes to talk to me when I'm trying to sleep. And the Lord told me to write a book. It took about a month to write. It took over a year for it to come to print. I went through a lot of challenges. And in fact, I'm writing a book about the book. And it's called Behind the Scenes of Can You Keep a Secret? Because if I was to share with you what I went through, you might laugh, but at the moment, at the time I was going through it, it was incredibly difficult and incredibly challenging. And I'm convinced the reason why I've dealt with so much opposition and obstacles and trials, to be quite frank, is because the longest chapter in my book is on salvation. And as a born again Christian, I know when you put God first and when you're very vocal with your faith, the enemy will attack. As we know, he's out to steal, kill, and destroy. But despite that, I have not given up and I will persist with my journey. I believe that the world can be transformed, not just by salvation through Jesus, but more than that, through knowledge. The Bible says people perish for lack of knowledge. And so my book, 60% of the profits will be going to charity, in fact, to build safe houses in the Philippines. But aside from that, my book is there to educate people, empower them, and more than that, to inspire them. It's not a book about depressing subjects or topics or stories. It's a book that I hope is going to transform people's lives, relationships, and interactions.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, you mentioned that you wanted to give 60% of the profits to charity. And reading the book, I realized that you were, stressing the Philippines, the Philippines, the Philippines. Now, to someone out there, the person was like, okay, so why not Ghana? Why not in the UK? Because there are abuses there, child abuse and whatnot, domestic violence. Why the Philippines?
And I've had that question asked many times, or even sometimes, why not the UK? Now, first and foremost, for me, I have a huge love for the Philippines. In complete transparency, my favorite country in the world is India. However, the Philippines, for me, in my opinion, the Philippines is safer for me as a single female. I love the culture. I love the weather. I love the islands. It is beautiful. And I love the language. In fact, I'm self-teaching myself Tagalog. Now, it's interesting you asked that question because just yesterday, I attended a Zoom program with IJM, International Justice Mission. They are my dream employers. They are Christian lawyers that fight trafficking around the world, including in the Philippines. They had done some research over a number of years, and they had put together a program just yesterday discussing human trafficking in the Philippines, and the numbers were astounding. The Philippines is #1 for cyber sex trafficking. When they gave the stats, it was something along the lines of 86% of the victims of cyber trafficking are victimized by their family members. And on the back of that, the majority of the time they're being abused, they're being sold cross-country to men in the UK, the US, and Australia. Knowing that and seeing how high the stats were, when it came to referrals, meaning from other countries that they have become aware, I hate that word, but aware of issues of abuse in the Philippines, with the Philippines, it was 237 referrals. And then Mexico, that was next, was about 20. And that is why, because at the end of the day, the Philippines is a hotspot. It is a hub. Why is that? It's because they speak English. In Japan, in Thailand, there would be issues of translation. But in the Philippines, the vast majority of people there speak English. And so that is why.
Well, that's interesting statistics there. Now, you've shown that indeed you are an attorney. So, now let's go to your story, okay? But before we go deep into the story of your book, start with, a whole lot of other things and your speaking engagements in Trinidad and Tobago, and I was blown away. I was impressed because you've spoken or you have delivered talks in so many places. How did you get these connections to speak up in these venues?
I'm sure by now, you know what I'm going to say, right? It was the Holy Spirit, like seriously. Every time I've gone to Trinidad and Tobago, the Lord has opened new doors. Now, for those who do not know, because I get this question asked all the time, I am English. Even though my accent changes, if you want, I could start speaking with a Filipino accent. My accent changes depending on where I am and who I'm with. I'm like a chameleon. I spent some time in the US, so my accent is different, but I'm English born, Jamaican parents. My family are not from Trinidad because a lot of people assume that I have some family ties. I have no ties. I am an immigrant and a stranger. And I love that fact because the point of the matter is the fact that all of these doors keep opening, the consistency of me going back, it's not because of family. Like you asked, why the Philippines? I've given a valid reason. Why Trinidad? It is the Lord. It is not family ties. And when I go there, everybody that I know, including the friends that I have, they are all complete strangers. But by the grace of God, He provides for me food, transport, accommodation, speaking engagements, donations, you name it. The Lord opened doors. But of course, being realistic, it isn't always easy. Because in any country, when you're doing good work, there'll be people who hate you, despise you, persecute you, defame your character. And I made a statement once on an interview in Trinidad quite recently. And I shared with my interviewer how I have been falsely accused and slandered and experienced a lot of pushbacks and negativity by people who should really support my work or work alongside me. And I said live on air that the more you persecute me, the more I'm going to come back. Because I know from the Bible that I read and the God I serve, when you're doing the right thing, you will be persecuted. At the end of the day, I said, if you want me to stop coming, then just be nice to me. And then I'll go elsewhere. But by the grace of God, it literally is complete strangers who come into my life, connect me to someone else who's a stranger and someone else, and these doors keep opening. Even a week ago, I was on an interview on the news, and that is just through somebody who knows somebody who got me on the news. And the last time I was on that station was about 3 or 4 years ago. But like I said, it's just connections. And I believe people see my message and they realize there is importance and value to what I have to offer, and they open those doors for me.
Okay. Okay, so now let's look at the story of, I know while I was reading, you said it wasn't even easy writing. I mean, what exactly happened? Okay. I mean, if you have been through that, been through any form of abuse, recounting and trying to replay it in your head or retelling it or even telling it is difficult. Juanita, kindly share with us what happened.
When I was 4 years of age, unfortunately, my mother's first husband, he started tickling me. And as a result of that tickling and the abuse that transpired, I have a huge issue of tickling with anyone, meaning whether you're tickling me or someone else, I'm just not comfortable. Because in my personal story, it started with tickling. And I remember I shared with my stepfather, and I told my mother, so I shared with my stepfather that I wasn't comfortable with him tickling, but he just thought it was fun. And so he pursued and he continued that. So I don't like being tickled, and I told him that, but then I would laugh, right? So he kind of felt, well, she's laughing, so let me continue this. I did tell my mother when his hand slipped, and I recall when we were in Spain on vacation, my mother told my stepfather off, and then she told me off. And her words to me were, don't let it happen again. And now as an adult, I personally believe when she made that statement, don't let it happen again, that placed the responsibility on me. Therefore, when it happened again, I did not tell her. When I was in my teenage years, I tried to confide in my grandfather and my aunt by asking them, can you keep a secret? Unfortunately, because of their responses, I never disclosed. The abuse was from the ages of 4 to 10. My stepfather is now deceased, but in the eyes of the law, LAW, justice was never served. Now, I was groomed, and I say groomed because he was very nice to me in the daytime, gave me candy, special privileges, let me stay up late, taught me to ride a bike, taught me to cook. He was my best friend. Now, a lot of people who don't understand grooming will not understand that. And there are people in my life who would never have believed I'd been abused because we were so close. But my stepfather would abuse me in the nighttime and be nice to me in the day. Every story is different. And when I talk to my audiences, I let them understand Every story is different. In my case, when I was abused, my stepfather would come into my room whilst I was asleep and he would sexually abuse me. I was a victim of attempted rape. And I tried to explain that as best as I can in the most non-detailed way, but so that people get what that means. Because I remember sharing with one congregation in Trinidad, and at the end of that, they were very confused when I had explained, and they thought that I was really not quite right in the head. I was crazy. I'm not crazy, guys. Trust me. Not even for Jesus. I'm not crazy. I'm very sane. Let me explain attempted rape. Attempted rape, it's not rape, it's not sex, but it's close enough to the crime. So it's not mere touching. Mere touching is not attempted rape means he tried and failed. It's like he was about to rape me, but then my mom came in. Now, my mother never came in. She didn't even know it was happening. She was downstairs on the phone. My stepfather was an alcoholic, but I want to be clear, being an alcoholic does not make you become a pedophile. The alcohol just gave him the confidence to be who he really was. Because I don't drink alcohol, but I've seen on alcohol bottles, it has the name, the ingredients, where it came from, the vineyard, the percentage. It doesn't say, warning, you will sexually abuse your stepdaughter. It doesn't say that. The alcohol just gave him the courage to be who he wanted to be. And when he was abusing me, because I was young and because children are not designed to have sex, it was, of course, very uncomfortable and painful. So I would toss and turn in the bed. There was no communication ever. There was no, don't tell anybody. That never happened. Remember, I was sleeping, air quotes, sleeping. In the daytime, he was completely different. So for many years, I would separate the abuse from the grooming, but the two things are indeed connected. But I'll say it again, he never told me, be quiet, don't tell anybody. Because remember, it only happened when I was asleep. And even though I woke up, I kept my eyes closed. I'm being violated. It's not like I told him, can you go away? I was afraid. And it went on, unfortunately, for 6 years of my life.
Okay. Now, in those 6 years of your life, you mentioned that your mom didn't do much. What did you expect of your mother? And why do you think she didn't do what she had to do? Why do you think when children tell their parents or their parents or step parents or tell people around that they are being abused, their biological parents sort of turn a blind eye? I don't know if they turn a blind eye or I just don't know. But share with us.
I think that it's a cultural thing. And I say that with some reservations because in all cultures, they often behave the same. But I say it's cultural because I feel to be quite frank, with the Black community, they don't like to air their dirty laundry. Because I know children who've been abused in the Caribbean and Trinidad, they tell a mother and the mother does nothing. Now, in my instance, I want to be very clear, my mother did not know what was going on. Now, my stepfather was very smart. And when my mother would answer the phone to person X, their name is irrelevant, that person talks a lot. So my mother would be on the phone for hours and he knew when X calls, my mother is engaged. So what he would do, he would come upstairs, abuse me, go into the bathroom, flush the toilet and go downstairs. So she just thought he was in the bathroom or something. Because back when I was born, I don't want to give away my age, there was no internet. So it's not like he was on the computer, but he already knew what he was doing. He was very clever and strategic. So whilst I was being abused, she did not know. I've got to be clear about it. She did not know. However, I want to point out that my mother, as a teacher, she was taught certain things, but quite often when we have knowledge, we may not see what's right in front of us because you have a trusting relationship. What saddens me though, when I was a child, it went on from 4 to 10. Maybe I was 7, I don't remember my age, but I told my cousins I was being abused. Because cousins sometimes, I'm an only child, cousins sometimes disclose things to one another or even siblings. They told their mother, well done. They told their mother, that is great. She told my grandmother told my mother. And then I remember this like it was yesterday. I was sitting down on the floor in the living room. My stepfather had gone out to the shops, probably to buy alcohol. And I remember my mum saying that we're going to have a talk. The family will have a talk. And I watched an advert at that time about being street safe and safety on the streets. And I remember sitting on the floor. I can't tell you how I felt because being abused meant I hid my emotions. So I don't know my feelings. I'm either happy, sad, or angry. I can't tell you how I felt, but I can actually see that as a picture in my head right now. And I sat there, and my mum told me, we're going to discuss this as a family. The discussion never happened. The abuse continues. I can tell you that nothing happened. Now, when my mother found out, I mean, let's be real, she found out then, didn't she? But when she really found out, which was after it stopped, my mum told me, put things in front of your bedroom door so you can't come inside. Now, remember, it stopped when I was 10.
Juanita, please hold
Yes.
on. You said your mom did what? She asked you to put what in front of your door. Does that mean she was aware of what was going on, but was she afraid to act? Was she afraid? Why would she tell you to do that instead of
Well,
rescuing you or separating?
I feel that, and I've gone to therapy a few times. It hasn't worked thus far, but I've been to therapy a few times, and they told me the abuse did not stop. I use the terminology stop because that's what I'm used to. So let me explain again. From 4 to 10 abused, it's paused, quote, is it didn't stop, it paused. My mother had found out between the ages of 4 to 10, as you know, the discussion with the family never took place. At 10, it paused. This is a quote, it paused. And then when she found out again, because remember, this is the second time she found out, or the third, because it started with tickling. When she found out again, because it had paused, my mother said, block your bedroom door. Because it had paused, She said, block your bedroom door. And so I said, I will do that. And the abuse did not continue. From that day forward, it did not continue in my bedroom. It did not continue in my bedroom. However, I will say that when I was teenage, my stepfather engaged with me and he said to me, I want you to do a certain thing. I will not repeat it on air, but he wanted me to engage sexually with him. That's because he still lived there. I said no and walked away. And also, he made a video with my mother, which he showed me, a pornographic video. Now, if she had kicked him out, I would never have been exposed to pornography. And in addition to that, I would never have been asked to engage sexually with him as a teenager. So what I'm saying is it paused, so to speak. It stopped when I was 10. But then when I turned teenage, he wanted to start things up again. They did not start up again. When she found out, she did nothing. And I believe, number one, fear, one of the main reasons, because of her career as a teacher, her reputation in the community. Sadly, a lot of parents do not do anything because they want to protect themselves, their reputation, and their name. And that's what I believe was the real reason for not kicking him out and not intervening when her and the rest of my family could have done so.
Okay, that's great. Thankfully, we have a clinical psychologist in our midst. She practices in the United States, New Jersey, if I am correct, and she will join us. But I'd like her to say hello. She's Pastor Anita. Pastor Anita, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. Awesome. Okay, so welcome once again. In case you just tuned in, this is the book review show right here on Facebook Live with me, Caroline Owusu Asamoah, and we are looking at the book, Can You Keep a Secret?, whose theme discusses childhood sexual abuse and the author's journey through it, and she goes by the name Juanita Headley, and we're just looking at how the story was unfolding and how she overcame. Now let me just read some few messages on Facebook. Let's see. This is from Joseph Jotepek. He says, she is a visionary. I like that. Juanita Charles says, that's so true. It was his excuse to do what he wanted to do. I think that's in reference to the stepfather. And John Hermit, our author for last week, shout out to John, says, glad to see the glory of the Lord in your life, Juanita. It's so good to see things like this. So Juanita says her breakthrough, or the reason she was able to come out of this, wasn't because of the many or loads of should I say strengths in quotes, or psychologists she met with, but God was the sole, or the Holy Spirit was the sole factor in her being able to overcome this situation. And now the book doesn't only address sexual abuse, but it also addresses child trafficking, which maybe we may not be able to go into, but hopefully in a week or two we will revisit this book. So, Juanita, before you continue, I'd like to find out from Pastor Anita, why 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 do people abuse people? Is there something such as light abuse or heavy abuse with regards to what Juanita went through?
Okay, so thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come on your platform. Juanita, God bless you so much for even being confident enough to share your story, because I know this is one of the stories that a lot of not even story, but this is something that you went through. So this is a life event. I don't want to even call it a story, but a life event that a lot of people go through, and are afraid to even shine light on it. And so to you, Caroline, why do people abuse others, or is there such thing as a light or a heavy abuse? To be honest with you, there is no such thing as a light or a heavy abuse. Abuse is abuse. And when we talk about childhood sexual abuse, many of us, we think that it is the abuse is categorized by an act, but it is not really. It's not just an act. It is something that can be physical. It is something that can be verbal. It is something that can be visual. So sometimes you may not be abused physically, but the verbal, even the verbal nature of the conversation that can lead to sexual pleasure or sexual entertainment is a form of abuse. Sometimes too, like Juanita said about pornography, you may not be abused physically, like somebody touching you, but being exposed to that can also lead to a certain form of abuse. And whenever there is a sexual abuse, it becomes a trauma, right? So you start experiencing traumatic events. And I think I like the fact that Juanita said that the way that she came out of it is through, her Christian faith and her relationship with God. I want to lay the foundation that childhood sexual abuse, we as believers, or everybody in this world, was created to experience sexual pleasure. Right? God created us and placed those things in us to experience sexual pleasure. But those pleasures come at a certain time. What happens in childhood sexual abuse is that it's like going into a room and flipping a light switch. So when the light switch is flipped on at the wrong time, it becomes a traumatic experience, because of the fact that that child was not supposed to experience that visual, emotional, or that act at that time. And so, a lot of people, they take pleasure in doing that. And I like one thing that Juanita said, because when she said that, her abuser was her stepfather. Many people think that abusers are people that are strangers. No, your abuser is not a stranger. Your abuser is closer to you than you think. And so, and that is what makes it more traumatic, because it takes away your innocence as a child, and it takes away your level of trust that you start to have with other people. So that abuse causes trauma, and that trauma can lead to emotional, mental, physical, even spiritual trauma, that if you're not careful, it can affect your life, forever. So
Thank you so much, Pastor Anita. Now, this question goes to both of you, Juanita and Pastor Anita, but to Juanita first. How can you tell an abuser, how can you tell this person is a pedophile? Parents are out there, they take their kids to school, they take them to church, they take them to fun fairs, or there's this uncle that comes, or this auntie that comes, or this friend, this family friend, or this vendor that sells stuff to them, but is quite cool with the family. how can you tell? Is it written all over the person's face? How can you identify an abuser?
I think
Does the person dress in a funny way? Does he have a long beard? Is he macho? Does he smile a lot? Can you tell us? Yeah, to Juanita.
Specific way to decipher or determine. Yeah, there's no specific way to decipher or determine who is or is not a pedophile, because like Pastor Anita rightly said, these are the people who are often closest to you. Your guard is down. And the sad reality is the normalization. Has a long coat or a rain mac, and he carries a plastic bag and has a pet dog that's off a leash. I mean, come on, that guy could just shave his beard and instead have a hamster. I mean, realistically speaking, you can't put your finger on it. At the end of the day, it isn't just men, number one, it can be women too, and that is really important. Women do it too. We even have pair-on-pair sexual abuse. I know of a girl who was 5 and she was sexually abused by her cousin who was 3. At the end of the day, any person could be an abuser. And like a friend said to me recently, we should not look at a person's title, but at their character and at their fruit. What about a guy who spends quality time with his nephew? And that quality time is in public where they're playing video games. I know of a guy who was playing video games with a little boy. He just come and play games. He eventually sexually abused him. So does that mean you can't play video games? At the end of the day, it is closer than we realize. And I think having a list of signs and indicators isn't helpful, because these men and women, they're very, very smart and shrewd. And realistically speaking, any person can be a pedophile. And on the back of that, like Pastor Anita said, maybe that person produces or creates visual imageries, meaning pornography. A person may simply watch pornography with children and they're a pedophile, but they're not doing anything sexual. What about a person who likes to just spend time going to the swimming pool and he doesn't do anything? Pedophilia is not always about physical touch. It could be visual. It could even be listening. It could even be having sex in a room next door to your kids, and you know they can hear that. So it's very, very difficult. All I would say is that the best way to safeguard your children is to let them know, to communicate to you and to inform you of anything that happens, because at the end of the day, it's usually the people closest. Telling them, look out for uncle with a long beard, or stay away from uncle or granddad, that's not helpful, because women and peers do it too. So when people ask that question, I can't give an answer, because it can be absolutely anybody.
Thank you so much, Juanita. Now, Pastor Anita, what are some of the signs? I mean, you have seen loads of people come seek advice. I know you study people's behavior. I know that definitely you're a psychologist. What are some of the signs, or how can you tell that this person, Juanita says she wouldn't be able to tell, but how can you tell?
Okay, well, like Juanita clearly said, there is no specific look, right? So an abuser does not have any specific look. But I think, even speaking from an experience, one of the things that happens is that when you begin to trust somebody too much, sometimes it becomes an issue. And let me say this. So an abuser can also be someone that you really look up to, someone who is your mentor, someone who is your counselor, even someone who is your pastor can become an abuser. Okay, because, like for me, an example, growing up, I used to go to my pastor's house all the time in Ghana. I used to stay over their house and stuff, and it wasn't a big deal, right? But coming to the US, I had that same mentality that, oh, okay, if this person is a pastor, if this person is, one of my mom's friends, I can trust the person. So I was so vulnerable and I was so naive that I thought I could trust everybody. And so in that aspect, I ended up in somebody's a pastor friend's house, and all of a sudden something was happening, in the sense of he was saying certain things. It wasn't like a physical touch, but he was saying certain things that denotes that if I am willing, he is also willing. And so in my mind, I'm like, this is a pastor. This is someone that I'm supposed to trust. And remember, the person did not look like it because of the person's maybe their religion, or maybe even their prominence in society. So a lot of people you will excuse as, this person might not be like this, but then this person is exactly that. But then I realized that one of the behaviors is that, you know, they like to admire you a lot. They like to say a lot of things that for you as a girl or as a woman, you feel like, oh my goodness, like this person really cares about me. This person really loves me. But they're saying that to arouse their own desires and to make you more comfortable. And so if you don't have self-esteem, what the person is saying can actually cause you to feel like, oh my goodness, this person really believes this in me. But if you believe that in yourself, you will not easily just take somebody's words of affirmation just because you feel like, oh my God, this is the only person that has ever said this to me. Because one of the signs of, you know, the abusers are that they're very flattering with their words, and they like to give a lot, right? Not every giver is an abuser, but that's one of the characteristics. They'll give you money, even when you don't ask for it. They'll give you this, they'll give you that, because they feel like giving and telling. Because, you know, women, we like what we see, and we also like what we get. And so those things are some of the things that, or loopholes that they can use to get what they want. And so if you don't have somebody to talk to, like Juanita clearly said that she told her mother at some time, and her mother said, do not let this happen again. That is very, very dangerous, because like she said, it made it seem like it was her fault. She was the one that was allowing that to happen. And so, you know, those are very, very important.
Thank you so much, Pastor Anita. Now, let me read some messages. Jacob Otin Jr. says, well done, Caroline. Keep it up. This is an interesting but sensitive topic to review. I pray the session will lead many lives to freedom. Your resource persons are great. God bless you. God bless you too. And just to Pastor Anita says, you are just on point, woman of God. Now, Juanita, I would like to thank you once again. I'd like to encourage you, and I'd like to say that I really admire your courage coming out to share this sensitive, very, 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 very sensitive topic. One being that when you come out, people doubt you and people feel that you need attention. Now, how did you feel when you told people in church, especially, and it rather led some men hitting on you, men who were old enough to be your father? How did you take that? How did you feel?
Honestly, I was really angry by that, because I just felt they were taking advantage. But please hear me, I didn't think they were trying to exploit me. They just saw me as a young person who's single, possibly virtuous, meaning they don't know what, meaning they don't know my virginity status, so possibly virtuous, but young, single, and they're single too. And then they just kind of wanted to take advantage of that. If I stand up at church and say, hi guys, I want you to pray for me. I've been sexually abused as a child. I want to get married one day. That's not your opportunity to offer to marry me. That was not what I was doing. Church is not for me a place where we can get speed dating or hookups. That's not what church is for me. Church is for me a place of sanctity, a place that we can come and receive help, healing, prayer, support, and fellowship. It is not a hookup place or a let's find a husband place. So I was not happy with that. I was very uncomfortable. And what was sadder still, from the way that I feel, after I revealed that at church, I have noticed how every time I've gone back, some people shun me. That's how I feel. I'm even saddened to say that I did a testimony quite recently at church. And when I shared my testimony via Zoom, it was about 10 minutes long. One of my close friends actually walked out of the room. And I was really bothered by that. And I said, you know, maybe I should just not say anything to her. But I'm like, you know what, let me just message you and say, hey, did you hear my testimony? Because I saw you left the room as I was talking. That hurt me. The testimony was not about the abuse. The testimony is about the goodness of God in my life. And what was sadder still, When I shared my testimony for 9 minutes and 30 seconds, I observed how some people getting distracted, they weren't really listening.
Yeah.
And then when I shared that I'm doing a session just 2 days ago on testimonies and testimony sharings, and it's a Zoom program on a Thursday evening, I'd like them to join. Not one of the people who was in that room joins. And I just feel like maybe they see me as, I don't even know, as the leper. I have no idea. Nobody's vocalizing to me, but it hurts. And I feel rejected. And I don't really go to that church anymore because I haven't received support. It's not like somebody's praying for me weekly. It's not like somebody said, you know what? I know a great counselor. They heard my story and they literally shunned me. And I feel like a leper. And after what happened when I shared my testimony, just of the goodness of God, not one person turned up to my Zoom meeting. My friend walked away when I started sharing. I thought that's kind of disrespectful. I'm like, you know what? I need to go somewhere else. When I share my hurt, that they're willing to seek the Lord for my healing. I'm not asking you for money. I'm not asking you to pay for a therapist, but I know and I serve a God who heals. And if we say we are believers, then why are we not being that body of Christ to support somebody? But then maybe the issue is I've been in that church all my life. And whilst I was being abused, I was in that church. They didn't see it. They didn't protect me, but they are not the victims. And some people get it twisted. Some of my mom's friends have been reading her book and my mom told me, and I quote, they actually feel sorry for my mother. And I am the victim. What I wrote was the truth as I see it and as I feel it. Imagine your church rejects you. And then you hear that your mother's friends feel sorry for her. I am the victim. I am the survivor. But I know that all things are possible through Christ. And even if man fails me, I know that I have the Lord and the Holy Spirit, and that is all I need.
That must have been really, really Pastor Anita is laughing.
Amen.
Well, Pastor Anita, this question goes to you now. How do you tell if your child or your friend or your sister or your brother or your nephew or anybody around you, how can you tell the person is being abused or the person has been abused? And how do you get the person to seek help after you've spoken to the person and the person feels too intimidated, too afraid?
Oh, I don't know what happened to my internet. The internet just froze. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So how can you tell if someone is being abused? That is a very interesting and powerful question. To be honest with you, you can't really tell from the outside, right? But then there are certain actions that if you're really close to this person and you realize that maybe they start withdrawing, right? So this person used to come to you all the time and then they start withdrawing, or they start losing trust, or they start like staying in their room for a certain amount of time. I'm not going to say that constitute being abused, but you realize that those changes are things that needs to be addressed, right? Because maybe they're afraid, they don't want to come to you, but realizing that, means that you are aware of the person, you're aware of the changes. And so you go to them and say, oh, I've seen that you've been withdrawing yourself from, especially when we are having a family gathering or when this and this is going on. I see that you're withdrawing yourself. I see that you're not so trusting anymore. What is going on? And I think that, acknowledging based on what you see is very, very, very important, because that leads to an open conversation. The person is able to let you know that this and this is the reason why, I've been the way I am. And so that's very, very important. And also one of the things, how to get, your child or your nephew to seek help. First of all, it has to be trust. Trust is the number one most important thing when it comes to childhood sexual abuse. Even the person who is being abused opening up. If the person does not trust you, there is no way you can get them to even see a therapist or a pastor or whoever. And so you have to establish effective communication, which is very, very important. I remember that I was talking to one of my colleagues, and she said she was also abused. And she said one of the ways she overcame it was because her parents had an open door policy, right? We as Africans, it's like when we're going to see our parents, it has to be something very important, or some of us are even afraid to even go sit with our parents and talk to them about something. But I believe that when parents have an open door policy, it allows the children, it establishes a relationship with the children and allows them to openly come to them at any given time. So the child does not wait until the abuser escalates, but it's like, oh, okay, you know, daddy or mommy, this person tried to touch me, or this person said this to me. Because once they start speaking it, then the next thing, if you're not careful, the action begins to follow. And so the open door policy is very important because it leads to the child trusting the parent or the guardian, and whatever the parent tells the child, you know, they'll be like, okay, you know, my mom or my dad or my sibling trust me. So if they want me to seek counseling or talk to somebody else, you know, I believe that they want my best interest. But if there's no trust, then it's very, very difficult. It's very difficult. Trust is very important. I don't know where Lady Caroline went, but
actually, let me just pick up on that, because I completely concur with what you were saying. And I feel it's really important to have intimate conversations with your children. I feel a lot of parents do have conversations about nobody should touch your private parts, but I don't believe that's enough because of grooming. When a child is groomed, it's so subtle, and then, oh, I've been abused. It's so subtle. Because I do wonder and I do question how it is that so many children go through this abuse so secretly, it's never uncovered. And then when they're 70 or 80, then they disclose. And I think what's also important is to actually use the question, why? When you want to engage with your children, instead of accusing them, instead of attacking them, ask the question, why? Sometimes it's inappropriate to use your mouth to ask that. Sometimes you've got to use your head. I know of a young boy, he was sexually abused by his nanny. As a result of that, he was sexually promiscuous and would come to school early and have sex in the back of the classroom. Like Pastor Anita said, it's right in the Bible. It says, do not awaken love before it desires. That is the light switch she was talking about. And so we have to understand when a person behaves a certain way, there is a reason for that. If a young girl is pregnant at a young age or outside of marriage, instead of judging her, you should ask yourself, who is the father? Because some of these girls and even women who are pregnant, it is a family member. It is incest or rape. So when we're judging, that is unhelpful. And on the back of that, what is really important, I believe, is that parents need to have this conversation with children. Grooming is important, number one. Number two, I feel it's really important for parents to say to their children, if anything ever happens to you, if uncle or auntie or cousin or brother or sister touches your private parts and tells you not to tell me because you will be arrested, or I will be arrested, or daddy will be arrested, or mommy will be killed, please come and tell me. We will be safe and we will protect you. Because sometimes that is what the perpetrator says. Sometimes he makes the statement, or she, if you tell, you will be killed. Your parents will go to prison. You will go to jail. At the end of the day, you have to preempt these things by doing the right thing, which is by having these conversations before your child is even abused. And don't ask your child, were you abused? Usually, from my experience, and even as a survivor and victim, they will deny it because of fear. False evidence appearing real. Instead, ask them, why did auntie pull your skirt up? Why did uncle go into the toilet? Ask questions that are open, so then the child can explain. And when you ask, why did uncle kiss you on the lips? She'll be shocked because you saw it, you were aware of it. And the point is, when you say that, even if she doesn't tell you the truth, her body language will speak volumes. We need to listen, not just with our ears, but with our eyes, so we can identify things. And like Pastor Anita said, yes, there are identifiers, but not every child will exhibit that. For me, I had low self-esteem, insomnia, wet in the bed, anger issues, few friends, couldn't hold down a job. Those are some of the identifiers. What about obesity, STDs, sexually transmitted disease? But remember, Just because somebody's obese doesn't mean they're abused. Just because somebody wets the bed doesn't mean they're abused. There are signs and identifiers, but if a person is about 45 out of 50, then they've probably been abused. But remember, you've got to listen, you've got to ask the right questions and be willing to accept their version of truth, because usually abuse is somebody that you know.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, sorry, I had a little hitch, but I'm back. Thanks for your submission. So parents out there have seen or have heard how, I mean, some of the characteristics of these abusers and some of the effects and how you can tell if your child is going through that. It's amazing how time flies, but before we sign out and give our final submissions, I'd like us to address one final thing, which has to do with how can you protect your children? How can you protect your children? The reason I ask this is sexual content is everywhere. It's in their movies, it's in school, it's on the billboards, it's in adverts. I mean, it's everywhere. It's like wherever you go, it's being served on a plate that, hey, have sex. This is sex. Want to try some? You know, it's like that's what's going on right now. Now to Pastor Anita, and then we'll take Juanita's closing remarks with that included as well. Pastor Anita, what should parents do?
I have three things, and that three things I actually wrote it down right now when you were talking. And based on what Juanita said and this whole conversation, one of the things is to pay attention to your child. Pay attention, because as a parent, you should know your child more than anyone else knows your child, right? If somebody goes out and or comes in and tells you that, oh, my child is this and that, you should be able to know that my child is or is not able to do that. And so paying attention to your child, the signs, the changes, you know, it's very, very important. That's one. Two, listen to your child. Many parents think that, she's just, or he's just a child, so they don't know what they're talking about. But most of the children, even though you might think they don't know what they're talking about, there is some truth to what they're saying. And so you, as a parent, you have to help them to tell their truth, right? So you don't say that you're lying, or you don't say that that's not true. No, it is their truth. So if it's something that has happened to them, even though you weren't there, listen to them, because that's very important. And then later on, you can do your own investigation. But when a child knows that you're not listening, they will not come back to you again. So pay attention to your child, listen to them, and please make time for them. I know money is important. I know many of us, because of, we want the best for our children. We want to put them in the best education, give them the best education, this and that. So we think about material things, but emotional damage is very crucial, because you can give them all the material things in the world, right? And then at the end of the day, if they're mentally incapable or emotionally damaged, those material things don't matter. And so please, no matter how much we work or no matter how much we want the money, we need to make time for our children and let them know that we are here for them. That open door policy has helped so many children to be able to come out and talk to their parents and let them know what is going on and to get the help that they need.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Pastor Anita. Thank you so much. Juanita, briefly, can you tell us what parents can do? I know you started something on lessons during lockdown, but briefly, can you tell us how parents can protect their children? And then you tell us where we can get the book to buy or how one can reach you. Yeah.
I definitely want to concur with everything Pastor Anita said. It's really important to listen, to ask the right questions, to believe the child. That is important. I also want to expand, because this is something that often parents do when they talk to their children, particularly when they're very small. They may say cookie, pumpkin, butterfly, cherry in relation to their private parts. I know of a girl age 7 who came to school and said, "Daddy is eating my cookie." Nobody knew she was being sexually abused. Parents need to use the right language. That is important. And then the second thing I want to say, when a child comes up to a parent and asks the question, "Can you keep a secret?" or some other variation of that question, the parent needs to say yes with their mouth, listen to the secret, and once they've heard that secret, tell the child, "I have to break your trust and phone the police." I'll say it again. Can you keep a secret? Yes. Allow the child to speak, and then you tell them, "I have to break your trust and phone the police." Do not phone your husband or your wife. "I heard that you were sexually abusing our daughter." They will deny that and hide the evidence. Let the police investigate. It doesn't matter who the accusation is about: pastor, priest, doctor, lawyer, teacher, gym instructor. Phone the police, not the accused. That is important. And use the right language. It is not a cookie. It is not pumpkin or butterfly. Use the right language. And when the child tells you what they got to say, listen with your ears and with your eyes. That is important. Everything Pastor Anita said, I concur. But remember, no matter how they ask that question, "Can you keep a secret?" say yes, hear the secret, tell them, "I have to break your trust," and then phone the authorities. And then, of course, my message is important. My book is important. And I want people to know that even though we've got a lockdown and we're all sort of isolated, I speak. I'm not allowing the isolation to stop me from speaking and educating people. My message, it is a unanimous message that we all need to hear. Whether or not you're a parent, we all have children in our world. So please reach out to me on my website, changingcases.org, changing, CASES.org. My Facebook is Changing Cases. My WhatsApp number, it is a public number that I give out on air. It is +1 868 740 1008. That's +1 868 740 1008. I can keep a secret, and hopefully you can too. I speak all around the world on this message. I'm not going to continue speaking for free because I need to live, guys. Like, I do need a salary and income. And I've been doing it 7.5 years, guys. 7.5 years, I think, is a little bit too long to be working for free. So please, I speak, I have a message to give, and every Thursday I have free.
Juanita, you do have a sense of humor.
I'm a comedian. I've got free Zoom meetings every Thursday, every Thursday on the topic of trafficking and child abuse. If you want a copy of my book, message me, Facebook. You can type in my name, Juanita Headley, on Google. You can find me. And then finally, of course, thank you for having me here. And Pastor Anita, we got to collaborate. I want you on my podcast. We got to meet. You got a lot of information. And I want to take what you have and share it in the small villages in India, in the Philippines, in Indonesia, places you can't go. I want us to collaborate so that the information that you have, it can spread a lot further. So please message me. But I need your help for free. I'm a volunteer.
No problem. No problem. We're kingdom sisters. No problem.
Not a problem at all. Wow. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining. In case you just tuned in, I know we all have different time zones, and thanks to lockdown and thanks to Zoom, if you are wherever you find yourself in the world, you can watch us live. But in case you just tuned in, I'm sorry, we have to end it here. It's been the book review show with me, Caroline Owusu Asamoah, and I've had Juanita Headley, attorney Juanita Headley, with us. She shared her story about her childhood sexual abuse, and her book, her latest book, is freshest from the oven. Can you keep a secret? So just go to Facebook or go to Instagram, Changing Cases. That's Can You Keep a Secret? CYKS. Yeah, you can find her there. And with thanks to our pastor, our clinical psychologist, our Pastor One, Pastor Anita Oansa. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Friday afternoon or evening or dawn, wherever you find yourself around the world. Thank you so much.
You are
God
welcome.
richly bless you. And to all those who watched, thank you so much. If you need more info about this show, if you're an author out there, you want your book to meet the world, this is the show for you. So you can call
Definitely.
115 1615. That's 0231 151615. And if you go to Pastor Anita's page tomorrow, she's hosting 7 Dynamic Ladies. Tomorrow they are talking about mental health. Okay, we are discussing mental health, and I know this topic is also going to creep up there. How women are abused and the kind of mental trauma it causes them. So I will be there. So I hope you will be there. And Juanita, can you keep a secret? She's told us the story behind it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tune in same time next week. We have Mr. Escodo up next week. So thank you so much. It's bye from me. I'm Caroline.
Bye-bye. Thank you for having us, Lady Caroline. God bless
Bye.
you so much. Juanita, God bless you.
God bless
Nice
you
to meet
too.
I have a kingdom sister now. God bless you.
Amen.
All right, let's connect. Bye.
Definitely.